Today on the CEO Barbecue, we're looking for copper and gold in BC as well as Ontario, together with Torr Metals. For a bullet point summary of this and all other CEO interviews, please go to resourcetalks.com and subscribe to our free weekly newsletter. The company you're about to hear from has paid us for the production of this interview, but this interview is still intended only for experienced speculators because this is venture capital and mining is a very risky industry where failure is the norm. All conversations are general and impersonal in nature, and they contain forward-looking statements. I'm not a licensed financial advisor, and my business sells content-producing services, which also makes me biased. So before continuing on, please talk to an independent investment advisor with a good long-term track record because your capital is at risk, and also visit setterplus.ca where you'll find the company's official filings. If you're not 100% sure you understand all the biases and the disclaimers that I just showed you, please go to the last section of this video and do not consume this content unless you fully understand and agree with everything said herein. That all said, Torr is an exploration company looking for copper, gold, porphyries, or at least one that would be big enough to matter in the context of today's British Columbia. Their flagship asset is called Kolos, and it's located right on Highway 5. It's about a 3-hour drive northeast of Vancouver. BC is not the only place they have assets in, though. They also have a gold exploration project with 2 targets on it in Ontario. That project is called Filion, and it's also on the highway. It's on Trans-Canada Highway 11, about a 9-hour drive to the north of Toronto, which is kind of funny when you think about it in terms of a drive. That's very Canadian. I would call it a 1.5-hour flight here in Europe, but it is a 9-hour drive to the north of Toronto. Now, I'm not going to be doing a full company overview here, though, because Malcolm and I already did a deep dive on the company, on Kolos and Filion about 4 months ago, and I'll list that video in the description of this one. If you haven't watched it, please do, because that's where, again, we did a deep dive on the project, as well as the infamous smell test on the barbecue, where we talked about insider alignment and incentives, track record, and whatnot, as well as the risks and everything else that comes with the exploration business. Just really briefly on the numbers here, Torr Metals is listed as TMET, so that's TMET on the TSX Ventures Exchange, where the average 3-month volume is up actually since last time, so it's about 300,000 shares now. The stock's 52-week high is 27 cents, and its 52-week low is 8 cents. Market cap is up as well. It's about double since the last time we spoke, so it's just over 15.5 million Canadian dollars today, and there's also just under 84 million shares outstanding, which means today this is an 18.5 cent stock with a 50 and a 200-day moving average at respectively 19.2 and 15.6 cents, which means the stock is now trading kind of in between the two. Again, for the rest of the details, share structure and everything else, go and watch that previous interview, because it is finally time for me to shut up. And Malcolm, I'll give you the word here. But first of all, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks, Antonio, for having me.
Pleasure's mine. I'm looking forward to an update. I really want to know what's going on with Bertha. This is just kind of from a selfish perspective. That's why I got interested and got in the first place. You've got some assays from, call it about a month ago now. The market wasn't happy, though. So talk to me about that. What did you drill? Why didn't the market like it?
Yeah, so with that, like maybe if we go back to the original thesis that was on the Bertha target, why did I even like it, and why did we even go and target it? So really that all came back to last year. So last year we acquired the area as it is contiguous to the rest of our 100% owned 275 square kilometer land package on our Kolos project. But what I like specifically about this area was that there was a historical exploration pit. And within that, we saw high-grade copper potential. We were able to verify that with rock grab samples that came back with almost 17% copper, mostly chalcocite. And it was in a supergene altered oxidized environment within this fragmental volcanic unit. So all that, those were very prospective things to see. For what we were using as a model was a New Afton style model. So New Afton is located about 24 kilometers to the north. It's actually structurally connected along a north-northeast trending structure. And that was the thesis, that we've got some sort of symmetry between the trend between Ajax and New Afton, and that symmetry is repeated within the Bertha sonic area. So together with that, what was really important at Bertha was seeing a picrite contact. So picrite, previous to this, I've not seen picrite in any trends south of New Afton. Seeing that unit is highly prospective, as that is really what is seen as a main concentrator to copper mineralization within the New Afton area. It's a very prospective lithological contrast, very chemically reactive, and it's a good copper concentrator. So with that, we ran an IP survey late August last year, came back with a very large chargeability anomaly just to the south of the pit. So this was our primary target, as we've got the surface mineralization, high grade potential, the right type of alteration, the right type of host rock. So that is what we drilled in this first phase of drilling, with the plan to always return for a second phase of drilling in 2026, which is coming up shortly. So we are fully funded for another up to 6,000 meters of drilling for phase two. But what we encountered, so of course this was a first ever drill program, so there's no other drilling in this area that we had to go off of, so completely grassroots. And it's important with that because we have to get a geological context to see how it fits the model that we're working for. And everyone needs a model. So we were using a New Afton style model. I keep stressing New Afton style because you need to look around and say, well, what does this look like? What does the alteration match to the mineralization, the host rock?
Mhm.
So really what we found, we were testing those features. So we want to see, is the picrite boundary really that favorable lithological contact here? Does it concentrate copper mineralization? What are the structural controls? We were testing specifically north-south and east-west structures that we thought looked to be prospective. And then looking for the styles of alteration. So are we seeing continuation of that supergene alteration? And are we seeing hydrothermal magnetite or evidence of proximity to a porphyry? And exactly where are we within that porphyry system? All that has to be answered through drilling because there's no surface exposures for the most part outside of the historical exploration pit at Bertha. So yeah, what we got certainly, I think, was not what the market was hoping to see. I think the market was hoping to see a hit like a new Afton system right off the bat. Of course, we're drilling a very large porphyry system. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to end up within the core of a porphyry in the first ever drill program. But what we did demonstrate, and what I really like to see, was we did hit consistent copper along the picrite contact. So in holes 1 to 7, we did hit this consistent, coherent, repeatable body of copper mineralization concentrated along the picrite contact. So that proved the thesis that picrite can be a concentrator here to mineralization in this area. Those intervals, though, were averaging about 100 meters of 100 to 500 ppm copper. So anomalous, certainly not economic.
Mhm.
Together with that, we saw the native copper. So native copper, we had a number, more than 60 individual occurrences of native copper throughout the drilling. A lot of that native copper, when it was hosted in veining, was associated with hydrothermal magnetite. Certainly is meaningful, as that suggests that you're not too far from the potential source. Magnetite within these porphyry systems is found more within the core of a porphyry system, is where it will be concentrated. Doesn't travel too far within these systems. Of course, keep in mind these are big systems. You could be talking anything from 5 to 1,500 meters where their reach extends. We also saw brecciation, the right type of alteration. So holes 6 and 7 hit brecciation. We saw kaolinite, dicite alteration. This is important because you're seeing that reduction of the QSP, so quartz, sericite, pyrite, your philic alteration zone that forms the shell to your core. We did hit that in hole 6 and 7. And dicite is a lower temperature alteration of clay that happens afterwards. It's a supergene weathering process. So also part of this supergene alteration envelope. And really, I'd say as well, we've refined that geophysical model out of the drilling that we've done. So we tested this overlapping resistivity chargeability anomaly that was in proximity to high grade at surface. That resistivity certainly was a good indicator for brecciation and intrusive dikes, but we didn't hit the dense veining or the main intrusive body that we were hoping to find, with which would be more typical of getting into the core of that porphyry system. So those were the things we did accomplish. I think with that, it certainly does not disprove the thesis that we set out with, that we're looking for this new Afton style system, but it certainly refines it for phase two. So, yeah, it refines a number of different factors that we'll be looking at and that we can discuss as well.
I do want to know more about that, but people listening should also want to know more about Tara Hutton, who doesn't only make the invisible investable, but they've made this video free of YouTube ads by sponsoring it. Tara Hutton is built for the people who are tired of going through boring PowerPoint decks and geological jargon when they're analyzing mining companies. It's a digital platform where the data, the story, and the context sit together so mining investors can use visuals to understand the why without needing a geology degree or a week off work. And if you're on the company side, it's a great way to present your project like a serious operator with everything investors keep asking for in one place. Contact them at terrahutton.io. I am looking forward to going into some of the details and the nitty gritty. I do want to talk about the picrite contact and the thickness of the alteration zones that you hit there. But just going back to the market's reaction, looking at the reaction online as well, there was a lot of chatter from people saying you overpromised before the results. Do you feel like you did, or did you also expect better results? What do you think happened there?
So with that, so I was always trying to be as careful as I could, and I saw there were a lot of comments as well that I was being too careful and not pushing it enough. With that, this is a first ever drill program into a large scale porphyry system. Looks to be even a cluster porphyry area with the new emergence of our Bertha North target, which is just over a kilometer to the northwest. Um, and with that, I was always trying to stress that this was a new Afton style system. And that was only speaking to when you're starting these early stage exploration programs. You need to be able to point at something. Well, what does this look like? And what do we expect? And then how should we know what a success is? So in this case, I think from a technical perspective, we certainly have been successful in demonstrating the value of the picrite that we do have, the types of structures that we targeted, and how we should target future structural controls. So it was always an effort to not overpromise. I think we did hit that balance. Of course, it's always a very hard balance to meet, and there's always the expectations of the market built into it.
Mm.
I think a lot of people heard new Afton style system and they jumped immediately to, well, it's a new Afton, a new Afton, which was certainly not something that we ever promised.
Yeah. Hard to find New Afton on the first hole either. Do you know when New Afton was found, by the way? What hole was it? What was the discovery hole there?
So the discovery hole, that was about 52 meters of 0.4% copper. New Afton actually wasn't the initial discovery. The initial discovery was known as the pothook diorite. So it's actually more of a hypogene exposure of a diorite porphyry system
Mm.
that's just over a kilometer to the southeast of New Afton. Uh, with that, there was a historical adit that was at the pothook diorite. That's where they focused a lot of the early drilling, gained some good high grade copper gold results. And then they went and they drilled a chargeability anomaly over at New Afton. And that was really the work was concentrated within the 1960s. And then it was moved along both through public companies, private companies, until it was eventually acquired by Teck and underwent open pit mining, which was concentrated mostly in the 70s. But that first hit that really demonstrated the potential of New Afton was 52 meters at 0.4% copper.
Mm. And it was not the first drill hole in the project either.
No, certainly not the first drill hole. There were a couple of operators that tried and dropped the project before Chester Miller really advanced it. And with that, like it was early stage. So they were doing the initial drilling, certainly was not on the first hole. And really, once they defined the upper portions, that was getting closer to about 50,000 meters of drilling by the time that they defined what the near surface ore body looked like for the open pit mining that they eventually moved to do.
But bottom line for you, you're not, because there's a news release about Filion as well, which I want to talk about here in a couple of minutes. But you're not switching focus here from Bertha. Like it's not like you're gonna go anywhere else. You don't think the target is killed yet.
No, certainly. I think there's some things that we do need to check off the list really as we move forward. So Bertha and the Colos project remains the main focus, the primary focus for Torr. We're fully funded for phase two of drilling, which is certainly something that I think we need to conduct in the Bertha area, as well as looking at how things go in the next phase of drilling will determine how we allocate the full meterage. But really, what we're looking for now, so the features that we saw in the phase one drilling at Bertha suggest that there is certainly a need to extend our IP surveys towards the northeast from where we drilled with holes six and seven. Really, what we're seeing there within those holes, we were seeing development of more phyllic style alteration. We also encountered the first ever bedrock source of gold within the area was
Right.
encountered in hole seven. So that was 3 meters at 0.25 grams per ton gold. But certainly interesting that that is the first one ever noted within the area, is
Mhm.
that gold bed in bedrock source. So we see a need to go to the northeast. So checking out at least 500 meters strike length, I'd say. This is largely based on the fact that we can see within the IP that we already have, there is a chargeability developing towards the northeast. We can see that it runs adjacent to a rotation in the picrite contact. So what we've tested so far was an east-west trending picrite lithological contact, more moderately dipping. But as we go to the northeast, we can see that architecture steepens. It becomes more subvertical and it's northeast trending. So that's important because that actually is a more prospective structural architecture from what we've seen for this copper mineralization. And the fact that we can see a chargeability already developing in contact with that RIP that we did, we now have a better idea of what IP we want to see, what kind of signatures we want to see in the next steps. So as we go to the northeast, we're looking for that heat engine. So we want to find the intrusive source. We know that that is going to be defined by a resistivity signature. So as we go to the northeast, if we're seeing a larger, higher, well, stronger resistivity signature coincident with a chargeability, that certainly forms a priority target and the potential source to the mineralization that we did drill. I think what we did drill really has been showcased at this point as a leakage feature. So a significant amount of copper. You were asking about the size of the alteration. It still goes down to 600 meters vertical depth, native copper throughout. So it's still a large supergene envelope, but we want to see where is the source to all that copper that we found. So we
Mhm.
also have a better idea now of what the baseline abundance of native copper needs to be for it to be worthwhile. So obviously we are using XRF as we were drilling. I would say that XRF has proven to be very consistent in showcasing the anomalism, but certainly not the grade.
Mhm.
So with that, we now have an observable baseline. We know how much abundance of native copper we want to see in the core for it to be something of interest. So we'll look for improving geophysics, so improving resistivity, chargeability as we go to the northeast. And we'll look as we start drilling. We now know exactly what kind of host rock we want to see, what type of alteration, and what abundance or type of mineralization we want to see. So we'll know right away, I'd say within the first 2,000 meters of drilling, whether or not we're into that zone. But of course, it all depends on what the results are that we see in the initial IP survey. That being said, we also do have a very viable porphyry target as well at Bertha North. So that's just over a kilometer to the northwest. There's mineralized structural trends that lead towards it. We have a soil anomaly, many overlapping geophysical signatures. It's a high magnetic anomaly towards, together with a resistivity at surface with an underlying chargeability. That's a very typical porphyry signature in BC, certainly highly prospective and worth targeting as well with, I'd say, at least 2,000 meters.
Hmm. When do you want to go back to drilling?
So with that, looking to do the IP at Bertha North to extend deeper, we initially only tested up to 250 meters vertical depth. I'd like to see what it looks like up to 600 meters, so that won't be too difficult to do. And then we'll do the IP extending northeast of Bertha. So looking to kickstart the IP here in March. It's been a very mild winter in British Columbia. We're highway accessible. So last year we were on the project actually in about mid-March, and there was very little snow. This year there's been even less snowfall.
Mm.
So expecting that we can get IP started in March, and then drilling will follow, depend on the IP results.
I read something like the first winter since 1986 that there was no major snowfall in southern BC or like in the Vancouver area. It was pretty warm actually when I was there for VRIC as well. So good
Oh,
point on
there's
that.
been certainly a lot of warm days, and
Mm.
it has not been the greatest for my ski season.
Exactly. How much money do you have left right now? You said, like you mentioned, fully financed multiple times for the 6,000 meters, but what does that mean? I mean, does that cover corporate and marketing and the geophysics and everything else, or how much money do you have?
Yeah, so we still have about 4 million remaining in working capital. With that, that's about 1.2 or 1.3 million in hard dollars, 2.7 million or so in flow through. So we'll be dedicating the flow through towards the drilling and IP that we're planning here. And with that, we're able to operate very efficiently with the exploration in this area. The fact that we operate at nearby town cities, we have local skilled workforce, we don't have an exploration camp, really allows us to put more exploration dollars into the ground, operating at, I'd say, some of the cheapest prices for drilling in British Columbia.
Do you think this is going to be enough money and enough drilling to actually to kill the target? I mean, because that's essentially what you're after in exploration. Is that going to be enough, or are you going to need more seasons after that to know for sure?
I think with this, it'll certainly be enough to really test our refined exploration model. So out of this, I think we'll have a very good idea of whether or not these targets at Bertha and Bertha North require further follow-up, or we start to look to alternative methods for advancing those portions of the property. But certainly, I think we'll have a good idea this first initial couple thousand meters of drilling.
So you have an unanswered question. You have the money to answer it, and you don't need to raise before actually getting an answer on it. Am I getting that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You do have a free trading date coming at the end of this month, maybe beginning of March, I believe, for the five and a
Yeah,
half million
March
dollar
1st.
financing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any plans to deal with it or any expectations? What do you think happens? How are you going to deal with it?
So with that, I think it's demonstrating that we're at the stage here where we're fully financed. We're moving into phase two drill program. We've really de-risked the targets that we do have and that we did drill, because we now have a better and more refined exploration model. So certainly we're moving into a drill program sooner rather than later. I think that's something that people can look forward to as we go back to these targets with a better idea of what we need to target. This is a first ever drill program, so we need that first phase to really tell us what's going on in the subsurface. We now have that. As well, we've coupled that together with not only do we have near-term copper gold porphyry upside adjacent to a highway in a district where any meaningful new discovery is really going to attract attention immediately. It's adjacent to highways. There's operating mines three main operating mines around us, and all of them, especially the New Afton mine, are looking for near-term feed. We've got that, but it's also coupled together with that district scale orogenic gold discovery potential that we've got on the Filion project. So a lot to look forward to here, even in March when those shares become free trading. And then we'll be moving right away into that phase two drill program. And then there's plenty to look forward to in the coming months as well. So I think it's a good time to hold on and see what we accomplish in this next phase.
But bottom line, you do think you're going to have more meaningful results even before kind of the drill programs for people in North BC start, right? Because that's kind of like July-ish is when
Yeah.
those programs typically start.
Yeah, those programs, like, especially if you're helicopter access, you need later in the summer, really, for the mountain passes to open up. There's a lot of snow, even in mild winters, that accumulates up there. And helicopter access requires that snow to really melt. So
Mhm.
it's a late stage uh, time that they can mobilize. Of course, they could always try and mobilize earlier, but the exploration costs skyrocket if you try and open a
Mhm.
camp early spring. So we certainly have an advantage with that, that we'll be able to move in months ahead of a number of our competitors in northern BC, and we'll be having those results really by the time that they're likely to mobilize.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. I think that's enough housekeeping. I do want to talk about some of those details that I told you about, specifically also alteration, as I mentioned, and the type of alteration that you're seeing. Shouldn't you be seeing some sodic calcic assemblages and more philic alteration, or are you seeing what you needed to see from an alteration perspective?
Well, certainly we were looking for more of that Philic style alteration. With that, if we are looking at a New Afton style model, so New Afton has a very large supergene envelope. So similarly to us, it extends, in their case, beyond 700 meters vertical depth. It's highly structurally controlled. The fact you can get oxidation down to that depth really speaks to the long-lived structural systems that you have within the New Afton style system. So it's interesting to see that we too have deep reaching oxidation supergene processes. Really speaks to a large scale hydrothermal mineralizing system, one that does host copper, so it's copper bearing. We've demonstrated that. And with that, we want to now vector in on where that philic zone could be. So interestingly, as we go towards the northeast of the Bertha area, we do know from some reconnaissance work that was done this past summer, as well as some of the historical work, that as you go to the northeast there is concentrated sheeted veining. There is more pyrite content that you get within the rocks. Of course, keep in mind there's not a lot of outcrop here. We're not on top of a mountain. We're in a very low-lying, rolling hill topography. But those would seem to indicate that there is potential as you go to the northeast, that at the very north end of where we're looking to extend our IP survey is philic style alteration and veining. So we really have to check that off to see what develops as we go in that direction. And then we'll have to also test Bertha North. So we're still seeing the alteration we want to see. We want to see if we can find where that alteration continues, specifically vectoring in on that philic alteration, because that gets us closer to the core, shows more heat that's coming, so that we need to see whether or not there is an intrusive source towards the northeast.
Mhm. Is the thickness of the alteration that you're seeing what you had expected though? Like I think last time you and I spoke, you told me you'd want to see 150 or 100 to 150-meter footprints is what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, and that kind of goes back to the intervals that we did see in the drilling. So the intervals that really interest me is that average of 100 meters. It does range between about 80 meters up to 150-meter intervals in the drilling of where we got anomalous copper, and it's very consistent copper. So for that entire interval, you're getting consistent, repeatable, anomalous copper that was showing up within the drilling. And this was also within areas that were more strongly supergene altered, so more highly oxidized. In some cases, you're getting almost more like a clay level of the oxidization. So it was interesting to see those, that it's repeatable, it's coherent, it's concentrated along the picrite boundary. And that is the same sort of intervals, so the same dimensions you would expect with a New Afton style system. So if you go to New Afton, it to on average is about 90 to 100 meters in width. Of course, you need more drilling to actually get a true width than the drilling that we've done. But certainly a good start, a good indicator that there is a cohesive copper mineralized body that can really accumulate on the margins of this picrite boundary at the Bertha area.
Yeah. Well, I do see that you're attributing the copper anomalism to that picrite boundary, and that's what I said that I want to talk to you about because it got me thinking: is that an intrusive phase, and can it really be used for future for vectoring into the future drilling, or yeah, what is it actually? How did it get there in the
Yeah.
first place?
Yeah, so I would say with that, it's part of the remobilization process. So with what we saw, we basically drill targeted east-west and north-south trending structures that control the mineralization. We know that from surface measurements as well as the drilling that we've done at this point. And with that, I think so we're looking at this remobilization of the copper that's coming from probably chalcopyrite. Of course, what we need to find is where's the source to that native copper. That will be part of this phase two drill program. But you get that remobilization, that stripping of the copper content from chalcopyrite gets remobilized, ends up in these leakage features that we now know are along these north-south, east-west trends and reprecipitates once it runs into any kind of structural or lithological contrast. So with that, I think that's what we see with that picrite boundary is that it was still chemically reactive. It reacted with these hydrothermal fluids, caused the precipitation of that copper as native copper, in this case, very fine grain disseminated within the core. And so it is a proof of thesis that the peckrite itself is that geochemical trap that we're looking for. What I think we need to improve on is the structural architecture of that trap. So in this case, we were able to find that the peckrite contact, it's not quite steep enough. And I think being east-west, it's more of a leakage structure. It's not the primary structural control, which seems to be northeast-southwest.
Hmm.
So that's what we rotate into as we go towards the northeast there. And so the architecture is getting better. So we know that the pickrite contact has become subvertical, and we can see a chargeability anomaly developing adjacent to it. Now, what we want to see is a continuation. So see if that chargeability anomaly gets stronger. Does it come to surface to the northeast? And is there an overlapping resistivity anomaly that would be indicative of a potential intrusive body more than just brecciation and intrusive dikes?
What about the redox mechanism itself? What's that you talk about? Is that what's oxidized, what's reduced?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where pickrite is a great reducing agent just because it's very iron rich. With that, when those oxidized fluids, those hydrothermal fluids carrying the copper, run into that reducing agent, that's what causes the precipitation of the native copper along that boundary.
Mhm.
So we have seen that. We've confirmed that within the drilling, and we've confirmed that it's cohesive and repeatable. Now we need to see does that also happen as we go towards the northeast along a more prospective structural architecture.
But why wouldn't the picrite contact be kind of the main control? Like, why is it? Why is it? I guess being demoted to just leakage is what you called it earlier.
That's not so much the pickrite contact, although in this case it trends towards the east-west as well, so it's likely structurally controlled as well when the pickrite came in. But it's just that the orientation, that east-west orientation, that more moderate dip to the picrite contact, I don't think was the right architectural setting for what we need for perhaps stronger concentration of that copper mineralization. As well, if east-west is not our primary control, and it looks like it's actually northeast southwest, then we didn't end up drilling into the primary control. Northeast southwest still remains untested on what potential that orientation contains. So we'll be moving in that direction. Phase two will be the first drill testing of that northeast southwest orientation.
Mhm. You also talk about native copper, which is not something you see a lot. I even looked at the core when I was there at the VRIC. You had a little piece. You could actually see it. VC, I guess, visible copper. What are the implications of that? What does that even mean? You don't hear that too often.
Yeah, so the implications of that, and that's what we were excited to see as well with the Bertha target area, was that it was showing supergene style alteration as well as mineralization. So when we're looking for that, like we want to see that oxidation, sure, especially deep breaching along deep breaching structures. But we also want to see the native copper mineralization as a key feature because when we look towards a new Afton system, keeping in mind that's just a model, just we're looking for new Afton style. When we look there, its supergene zone is dominated by native copper, which is very unique, as you said. You don't see that too often, and really within any other BC porphyry systems, you don't really see an abundance of native copper to that level.
Mhm.
So certainly unique to a New Afton style system. And interestingly, we've now been able to showcase that we did have native copper basically extending for many hundreds of meters in multiple intervals within the drilling. So it showcases that there is an abundance of native copper, which shows that this supergene processing, this late weathering, really took place and really had a long time to develop within the Bertha area, which all speaks to the potential for a large scale source somewhere within the Bertha area.
Hmm.
And we think we have a better idea now of where that is.
Does it necessarily mean a deposit here would be, if it is here, would be nuggety though, or that you would have challenges with continuity?
Certainly, that's something to be considered. Of course, it's too early stage to say whether or not that is an issue. With that, yeah, it'll have to come down to follow-up drilling and demonstrating how the next phase of what we target, if that northeast southwest causes a greater abundance of concentration of native copper, then we may be able to improve on the continuity and the mineralization that we see. Of course, that's all dependent on the next phase of drilling, part of the next question that we're looking to answer.
Um, well, but you do mention that the higher grades localize in magnetite-bearing veins and hydrothermal breccias. Are they consistent, like an orientations perspective, but also just I suppose from the way they look, so width and stuff like that?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say actually they were quite like for the most part, it was good continuity between them. That was part of what we were following as well. With the drilling that we did do, the fact that we kept stepping out, that we kept drilling deeper, we were consistently hitting native copper at the same levels. So with the veining, like we got a good handle on the east-west trending veins. I think now we want to see is that the same as we go towards the northeast.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Are you doing oriented core or anything that could also tell you more about the structural thesis? I suppose as a structural geologist, that's what you like talking about at dinner
Mhm.
parties too. But yeah, are you doing that?
With that, so this first phase drill program, just because if you're doing oriented core, it lengthens the time that for the coring process significantly. So this was a first phase program. So what we wanted to confirm was the styles of alteration, style of mineralization, the form of the picrite contact. And then in terms of the orientation of the structures, so that can be determined actually even without oriented core to a degree through a couple of different processes, structural methods. So it can give you an idea of what the general orientation of these vein systems are. Of course, it can't be done to the same degree as oriented core is much more accurate. But we certainly have a good handle now on this, which vein systems we intersected and what the trend of those are.
Yeah, I understand that it is a first pass through program, and I'm really partly asking because you're hitting some gold at depth as well, as you mentioned, and
Yeah.
it got me wondering if it really is a vector or whether it's just noise. I mean, so does it have to respond to something, or what do you think?
Yeah, in terms of the gold, so that will be part of the second phase of drilling as well. It was interesting to see gold emerge. With that, we can see the orientation of the veining that was associated with it. We can see that there's the potential for it to be sourced from the northeast there, northeast of Bertha. And what's interesting about gold, when you're looking for these copper gold porphyry systems, that is also what you want to see is you want to see an improvement to the copper gold ratio as you vector in towards the center of the porphyry. So with that, for the first ever gold intercept in the area, like we're seeing that emerge here as we drill towards the northeast. We'll certainly be following up on that. Similarly to the magnetite, as you find more magnetite, more gold content, typically you're ending up closer to the center of the porphyry.
Hmm. What would those ratios be though? Like what would what gold to copper ratio would you expect as you approach the core versus the ratios you have now?
Yeah. Well, for that, of course, that's also just pointing to any kind of models that we have within the area. It's early stage, too early stage to comment as to the ratio that we might have. But even in terms of the new Afton system, as you get closer, more proximal to where the underlying hypogene zone is, you certainly end up in areas where you get like 1% copper and zero point 0.7 grams per ton gold.
Yeah. Um, and this is all rather theoretical, I suppose. I mean, geology is that way, and there also seems to be increasing pyrite content in that hole seven, if I read that correct. Hole eight too, I believe, if I'm seeing that here.
Yeah.
Is that fresh pyrite or is it oxidized? What's the relationship to that?
Yeah, so with that, it was actually seeing fresh pyrite within the system. So that's also a question of what is that related to? Is it that we're getting closer to the phyllic zone? Like if we are looking at a New Afton style model, the phyllic zone is very small. It's very constrained almost to the core of the porphyry at New Afton. So with that, yeah, seeing that increased pyrite content certainly is encouraging. Yeah, and that is something that we also note from further north to the northeast there, about 600 meters to the northeast. There is pyrite that starts to show up within some of the rare bedrock outcrops, as well as more sheeted veining. So we're seeing a concentration of quartz veining. We're seeing continuation of that pyrite content. So now we need to see what the IP really reveals as we go towards the northeast.
Are you gonna drill deeper because of the deeper IP then in that case?
With that, like we'll have to see what the IP signature comes back with, as this area is undercover, so we are reliant on geophysics. We'll see what kind of depths that we're looking at in terms of the signatures. Ideally, not looking to do any more deep drilling early stage here, because we would like to delineate what the near surface potential of this could be. So still looking to do, I'd say, 200 to 300 meters depth on the drilling. But of course, that'll be contingent on what we see in the IP and what we get in the first initial meters of drilling.
Mm-hmm. Do you think hindsight is 2020, I suppose, but do you think if you had drilled Sonic, you might have gotten better results?
Certainly. Well, Sonic is interesting as it's different when you see it at surface. So it doesn't look like the Bertha area. You don't see this large supergene alteration envelope or anything like that. Instead, what you have is a multi-phase complex of different intrusive units. With that, we see a strong variation between diorites, monzonites, porphyritic intrusive. So very prospective when you're looking for porphyries. Whether or not we would have done better, I think the next step with Sonic is we need to conduct some IP on that as well. There's that one area we sort of have a main central trend of higher grades in the soil anomaly going towards the northeast, but it does appear to connect as it gets closer to the southwest to the high magnetic anomaly. And along the margins of that high magnetic anomaly, we see the mineralization in the soil start to develop with a northwest trend. So that's certainly an area that I want to focus on for IP follow-up. Ideally, we're awaiting the permits, which are pending. Expect that we could do the IP together with IP in the Bertha area. And that'll give us a better picture of what Sonic is and exactly what the depth extents on that one could be.
Mhm.
But we are seeing strong copper gold mineralization at surface, over a percent copper and zero point 0.1 grams per ton gold,
Yeah.
and strong alteration styles typical of uh, like if we're looking for a regional comparison as well for a model, it's looking a little more like what you might see up at Ajax, which is just about 30 kilometers to the northeast.
Do you think that work at Sonic might happen in 2026 though, or is that something that's for further down the road?
Certainly looking at Sonic. So, of course, we have drill permits pending on Sonic. That certainly is a high priority target as well, as we're seeing good soil values for both copper and gold. They are, I'd say, they demonstrate that we're within the upper portions of a porphyry system. With that, we have to see what the IP tells us in terms of where the anomaly could be located. But Sonic is certainly something that we're looking to advance here as well in 2026.
Hmm. How risky are the permits that you're going for here? I mean, is that something that it's just kind of paperwork and it's going to get done, or is it more of a decision that's a bit of a coin flip?
Yeah, I'd say it's more paperwork just to get done, so it's just awaiting the processes, and you have to have the patience in BC for the time that it is taken for permits. With that, like we're already permitted in the Bertha area. We recently last summer got our permit for the Kirby Lodi area. So now just awaiting the permit for the Sonic area.
Yeah.
And yeah, and we've had no issues with any of those permits. So with that, expecting that it's just a matter of waiting for the time that it takes.
How was the relationship with the First Nations while you were drilling at Bertha? All good? Did you have consultations? What did they tell you? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so good communication. It was something that we prioritized actually. As with all of our projects that we've done, I've actually prioritized reaching out to First Nations prior to submitting for permits. So making sure we have those communications established, that we do have a baseline idea of what we're looking to do and what they need as well in the process. So that's all been very good. Maintain communication as we move forward, and it's all part of the conversations as well as we work towards further permitting.
Right. Lodi and Kirby, you mentioned that as well. Might as well get an update on that. Any kind of work planned there anytime soon?
Yeah, so with that, so with the plan phase two going forward, so we're looking to test the Bertha North areas, only because we still see that potential there. I've listed, yeah, where we want to go, what we're testing next, and why. So still looking for that new Afton style system. But Sonic or Kirby Lodi also offer areas that we can also move to focus on as well. So that'll be depend as we go to drill at Bertha North first. If we're not quite getting what we want to see, then we always have the optionality to pivot into a different target. So Kirby Lodi, I still like that target. It was our first area that we defined on the property. good soil values, equivalent to anything you would have found actually down at Kodiak Copper, which is about 60 kilometers to our south. We do know that there's a mineralized diorite intrusive there that seems to carry high-grade gold as well. So rock grab samples that varied across a kilometer between 1 to just over 4 grams per ton gold, together with copper ranging from about zero point 0.3 to 0.5% copper.
Hmm.
Uh, so we defined with the ZTEM geophysical survey that it's also a deep-reaching potential source to this. So certainly that could be another viable drill target that we look towards.
Well, there's multiple of them across the Colos project. And you could you can't dance with all the girls at all times, right? You're not able to sit on all the chairs simultaneously. What why not do something else with these targets? Is that even doable? Like, could you option them out, sell them, get somebody else to do some work on them, and get? 'Cause I don't think you're getting any kind of value for them. So is there a way for you to get that value out without you having to work on them while also working at Bertha?
Yeah, certainly. No, so this is like looking at the fact that we put together a very large land package. Majority of it is 100% owned. Kirby, Lodi, Sonic, those are all 100% owned. And we do have that optionality that this isn't just one compelling target, but really four compelling porphyry targets that we have arranged around Highway 5 in an area that certainly could use new discoveries. So with that, we are always having those background conversations with how we might want to move forward on these. As you said, like I'm not keen on going and drilling everything. I think there's a lot of value in being really prioritizing, really focusing. That's why we're prioritizing Bertha North at this time, which leaves the really having that added built-in value of Sonic and Kirby Lodi as well, sort of in our back pocket. Something that we could always pivot to, or something that we have the optionality to find alternative ways of advancing.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. You'd also want more land if you're successful in the first place
Yep.
there, so that makes sense. You have had some geochem that came in from Ontario, the Filion project, um, and this is within. I'm going to go. Eventually, I'll ask you whether you can do something about that and monetize that project. But it looks like the system, that just kind of looking at the notes that I had reading that news release, it looks like the system could be big enough to matter, or at least the geochem at surface is. The anomaly also seems structurally organized as opposed to random noise. And it also seems like the gold in the anomaly is more patchy than the copper, which seems to be more widespread. Those are kind of my main takeaways reading that news release. But what do you do with all that? Are you gonna drill it sometime soon, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, so with the Filion project, so that was something as well that we ended up staking pretty much at the same time as the Kolos project back in late 2023. With Filion, what I saw there was high-grade gold potential next to the Trans-Canada Highway 11. Really, the only work that had ever been done on it was focused within the 1930s and 1940s. And what really interested me was reading some of the old reports from that era and coming across the descriptions that they had for the rocks as like that is within geology. It's always important the descriptions that you come across, even more so than the interpretation, because the descriptions will tell you maybe something that others have not seen. And what I saw with that was that this is an underexplored greenstone belt with that high grade gold potential with highway access. So it's got everything I would want to do. So we did move in. We've done the first ever um, systematic soil sampling. We did some VLF EM geophysics, which gave us ground mag, as well as an idea of what the conductivities, resistivities are in the area. And those are important for interpreting what's going on. It took some time to locate the historical trenching. So we needed that LiDAR survey, which gave us a vision into being able to visualize. It's very good in being able to pick out where these historical workings were. Otherwise, you'll be wandering the woods forever trying to fall over a trench. So with that, we were able to finally locate those trenches, really go in there, and late this past year, did a quick reconnaissance to really check out only about 16% of the total trench network. I wanted to verify, was there potential here for high-grade gold? Something along the lines of what they were talking about almost 80 years ago. And that is what we've now demonstrated. So we've confirmed that that high-grade gold exists. Interestingly, that also confirms a potential bedrock source to one of our soil anomaly clusters within what we're calling the Oscar zone, which is in that area. And that soil anomaly came back just over 1 gram per ton gold in soil. So it showcases that as well, where we get these higher gold grades in soil has the potential to have near surface bedrock mineralization as the source. So it could be a good measurement of proximity. So that's really added, I think, value and prospectivity to our additional Miller target, which is about 1.4 kilometers to the west of our Oscar zone. And so with that one, we also have a gold cluster up to 1.32 grams per ton gold in soil. So it's early stages, but the fact that, especially in the Oscar zone, if you look towards the geophysics there, I've got both ground magnetics as well as the VLF-EM, and what you'll notice is the historical trenching is all concentrated in this one east-west trending resistive band that's flanked by conductivity anomalies. So that to me speaks to a large scale conductive shear structure that the central portion of it has undergone significant silica alteration, flooding that's occurred. So that's all highly prospective for these orogenic gold systems. But the fact that if you look at the ground magnetics to me seems to indicate a large scale fold structure. And potentially where these trenches are is focused on one of the limbs of that fold structure. And interestingly, right where that fold structure intersects that shear zone, that resistive band, is where the historical trenching is. So that in itself is a great setup for a very prospective, fertile gold environment. Having a large-scale fold structure that could be not only a structural trap for mineral gold-bearing mineralization, hydrothermal fluids coming out of this shear zone that intersects the margins of that fold limb, but also potentially chemically reactive, as all everything within it, and we were able to confirm this in the trenching. The volcanics, the metasediments, they're all iron bearing. You also have intrusive units that are iron bearing. So, same sort of thing. You've got potential there as reducing agents, chemically reactive, oxidizing mineralized fluids coming into contact, precipitating out.
Mhm.
So those are all the elements that I'm looking for when I'm looking for a large scale orogenic gold system. And with us being first mover in this area, we have first mover advantage. We've been able to acquire the full length of that gold bearing structure, which I'm calling the Filion structural corridor. And so that's 60 kilometers in length. And now we have all of that 100% owned by Torr Metals.
Mhm.
So in terms of advancing it, so that's a good question. That is something that we're having background conversations in as well. Whether we end up advancing the project ourselves, doing an earn-in JV, or even just selling it, we'll weigh all the options for how it can best uh, produce best results for our shareholders.
Well, and I don't mean to be annoying or not more than usually, but cool story. When do we see some value coming of it? When are you going to drill it yourself, or get it, optioned or sold? What's kind of the timeline expectation there?
Yeah, in terms of timeline, so I would say that that is something that looking to do here in the near term. In terms of exact timeline, I can't really disclose that this time, but certainly the summer is coming up. In this area, it's actually not that marshy. The ground is quite firm. So we certainly, whether it's ourselves or another party, can certainly conduct work starting this summer. So I'd say this year as well, we're looking to advance on this, especially now that we've confirmed the high grade gold potential right off the highway.
Hmm. Because again, it is a gold bull market. You have your copper target in BC, and you have this one, this gold target in Ontario. So yeah, why not? Yeah, why not partner it out? Is essentially what I'm thinking. What are the pros and cons of doing that, though? I mean, I suppose you spend a lot of time thinking about it because you're a geologist, so you really like the target, and it's important not to fall in love with a target and think about the value for shareholders, of course. So yeah, talk to me about that. What are the pros and cons of potentially getting this target into somebody else's hands?
Yeah, I think, well, the pros certainly is that you get somebody else to advance the project. So you don't have to do the dilution to spend the expenditure dollars to advance the project. But what we need is exposure to the value of the project for the shareholders as well. So with that, you can certainly get it in an earn-in JV. At the end of the day, with an earn-in JV, if you still hold 20 to 30% of the project and someone else has advanced it all the way, then that's certainly great value for you. And even that remaining percentage ownership is something of good value, which could be significant. That's all far in future, though, and no guarantee. And then as well, the sale, if it means we sell the project or something like that, puts money into the bank to advance further targets and benefit shareholders in that way. But certainly would like to have exposure to the upside, especially in a gold bull market. With a project such as this, where I see large scale orogenic gold potential next to a highway, I think is something that is going to be highly attractive in this type of market.
Hmm. Good. That's what I was looking for, and trying to see that you do have a plan for it, and especially to get some value out of it. Might be worth doing a bit of a catalyst summary here, if you will. Like, so it is at mid end February, call it here. March, you have that free trading date coming up. What's the news release going to be? What's the news release cadence going to be? What do you expect kind of month by month to come out?
Yeah. Yeah, so certainly over the next couple months, like as a summary, we have a lot to look forward to here with even just the portfolio that we've got. So we do have that copper, gold, porphyry upside together with that orogenic gold discovery potential in Ontario. Both great things to be involved in right now as we head into these markets. And keep in mind as well that these are both highway accessible. So that's something that I do stress a lot simply because I know that in transactions that I've been part of in the past or consulted on, that was always at the top of the list, was looking for infrastructure access, tier one mining jurisdiction. It really matters if it is an active mining jurisdiction or just a number of inaccessible resources with conceptual ideas on how they're going to get access. So accessibility is key. We have that. As we lead up here, it's that accessibility that's going to allow early access. So in terms of news flow, we can look at we'll be looking to do the IP survey here first thing on the Bertha and Bertha North targets, aiming to have that as soon as March of this year. Following that will be mobilization for drilling, uh, and that'll be at the Bertha and Bertha North targets to start on the Colos project. And then there'll be further work, of course, on Sonic, advancing with some mapping. There's actually some significant rock exposure in that area that certainly mapping and a little more work together with IP is going to advance that target to a drill ready stage. We're anticipating the permits to come through on the Sonic area. And then leading after that, of course, there's going to be results coming out.
Mhm.
And also, I think people should look towards some additional advancement in terms of the Filion project.
That's a neat summary. I appreciate it. And looking at my notes, I've been through most of it. I know you and I will have multiple conversations over the coming months as you have these assays and other results coming in. So I'll be looking forward to that. I'll ask you the same question as I did last time, though, Malcolm. What's the biggest or the most fair criticism that you've received on Torr Metals since the last time we spoke?
The most fair criticism, Yeah, I think it's really that management of expectations, especially with the first phase of drilling. So I think we did do a good job of trying to manage the expectations. Of course, expectations still ran high. So that would be what I would focus on in terms of that. Of course, as we lead up here, we've got more refined targets. We've improved our exploration model. With that, we'll continue to showcase to the market how we're approaching this in a systematic, methodical way, and how we're looking to advance not just the upside that we see on the Kolos project, but also looking for that optionality with the Filion project.
Right. That's again, that's a neat summary there too. What's your biggest or your most favorite criticism of me? What do you think I'm forgetting to ask you? What did you come here hoping to talk about that I failed to bring up?
Well, we've covered certainly, I think, the full breadth of what we've done at Colos, what we're looking to do. No, I think you've covered that quite well. Some good questions.
We didn't talk about the Canadians beating the Czech in hockey for the Olympics. So that might be a bit of a criticism. Maybe next time we'll do that.
We
Um,
can work it in. Yeah, yeah,
it's been a
definitely.
pleasure, Malcolm. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm looking forward to future conversations.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Antonio.
And as always, thanks to everyone for watching Resource Talks. I have a couple of more things to say, though. The fact that this company was interviewed here today does not mean that they're necessarily a good or a bad company. I'm not here to endorse nor attack anyone. I'm simply here to ask some questions. If you find that I have failed in asking a question that you would have liked to hear an answer to, which will happen as I'm not an experienced interviewer, please let me know and I will try to correct that mistake in a future interview. As mentioned at the beginning, please understand that mineral exploration and development is an extremely risky business. Losing money is the norm and should be the expectation. This is a very complex sector, and the performance of individual companies typically depends on many different moving particles, including company-specific factors like geology, financing ability, and many others, really, as well as particles that are outside of the company's control, like geopolitics, macroeconomics, commodity prices, and many more, most of which are nearly impossible to fully understand. Moreover, these companies that typically get interviewed on Resource Talks are in the pre-revenue stage, which means they rely on the public markets for the financing of their operations, which could result in shareholder dilution. Furthermore, as a general rule of thumb, you'll be better off understanding that all company communications online, albeit this interview or their website and their presentation and their social media accounts, or even the social media accounts which you thought were your friends and then told you about a stock, everything really that these companies do is intended as marketing. And although I do not make buy or sell recommendations because there is a clear conflict of interest given the nature of my business, many out there do. And you should be aware of that inherent bias and you should be careful out there. That bias is not always going to be clearly disclosed with everyone out there. So it is safer for you anytime you're watching any type of company specific content to approach it with a dose of skepticism and assume that the party telling you about it is biased in at least some shape or form, because there will always be a bias. Again, albeit clear or not. So always ask yourself what the incentive of your counterparty is and never rely on them regardless of their incentives, but instead double check if what they're saying is true, again, by using setterplus.ca. The fact that I have no idea what I'm doing should already be clear to you at this point. I am not saying this to make jokes or laugh with myself. I just simply do not have a long enough track record of consistent investment profits. So I should, under no circumstances, be considered an authority on anything. Again, although this may sound amusing to you, believe me, it is not amusing and it is not intended as a joke. I'm simply pointing out a fact and warning you not to rely on anything I do or say. Unfortunately, at least to my understanding, nobody out there has any special abilities. The CEOs do not possess any superior knowledge, and they cannot know about what will go up, what will go down, or what will go in circles. Some people even believe that to be rule number one on Wall Street. Nobody really knows. None of us know whether any of the company's activities will result in a success, again, given that we're talking about high-risk activities where most of the times it ends in failure. Oh, so unfortunately, try as I may, I won't always catch all red flags or all challenges with the companies. So even if I did ask a few tough questions in here, don't rely on this being all of the tough questions. Again, these are complicated startups with many moving parts, and I am conflicted given the nature of this business. Therefore, I cannot guarantee the quality of anything presented in this video, and you cannot hold me responsible for any losses or damages stemming from the way you decide to use this interview. Viewers, listeners, and readers acknowledge and agree that the information presented herein did not constitute a solicitation or an offer to buy or sell any security or investment or to participate in any trading strategy. Resource Talks and all parties involved in the management of the business strictly disclaim any and all liability for losses and or damages, whether direct, indirect, special, or consequential, or other consequences, however so caused, arising out of any use or reproduction of the content published by Resource Talks or any decision made or action taken in reliance upon it. By consuming this content, all consumers vow to release Resource Talks and all parties involved in the management of the business from all claims, proceedings, or consequences. This is all to say, I know it's a lot of lawyer talk, but this is all to say that you shouldn't blindly trust me or anybody on the internet, and you should do your own research. Once again, social media is meant for entertainment. It is setterplus.ca where you do your research. That's where you'll find a company's official filings, and I encourage you to read and analyze the Management Information Circular, the financial statements, the Management Discussion and Analysis, and whenever available, the NI 43-101 technical documents. If you don't understand everything in those documents, the chances of you losing money are even higher than they normally are in this space. And as mentioned earlier, the chances of even the best analysts in this sector losing money are extremely high, since this is venture capital and it is not for everybody. I'll leave you with one of Charlie Munger's quotes, which I wish I had listened to more often earlier on, which says, quote, "If you don't understand it, don't do it."